Thank you. If you're anything like me, at some point you've asked the question, what can I do to better protect myself from bladed weapons like broadswords and daggers? And the obvious answer, of course, is chainmail. But you don't want some off-the-rack chainmail. You're going to want a custom suit. And so you're probably going to make this yourself. I'm here to walk you through the process. First, you want several large spools of steel wire, 14 to 16 gauge. Anything lighter than that is purely decorative. Then get yourself a 3/8 inch metal rod and some heavy work gloves. You're going to wrap that steel wire around the rod, loop by loop, keeping those coils as tightly together as you possibly can. Once you've filled the entire rod, remove the coil and with a pair of tin snips, cut all the way down, creating many little individual links. You're going to need to repeat this process anywhere between 100 and 150 times to create between 15,000 and 20,000 individual links. You may want a couple Tupperware bowls. Now, get yourself a pair of pliers in each hand, and using those tools, bend the ends of the links together to form rings. Add rings to rings until you have chains, hundreds and hundreds of chains, tables coated with chains. Now, add links horizontally to create blocks of chainmail like this, sheets. You're going to need a lot of sheets because you're going to be following a very meticulous pattern to create a chainmail shirt, headpiece, or gauntlets, whatever your preference. Now, I recently had the opportunity to try this. Took on this project in my office. I roped some of my coworkers into it. And this is the result of over 3 hours of labor and some heavy calluses. And let's face it, this is pathetic, especially compared to the efforts of the Knights of the Serpent. Now, if you've never heard of the Knights of the Serpent, they are a group of individuals within a larger organization called Amtgard. Amtgard is a global organization of medieval combat enthusiasts, and they take their crafting very seriously. The Knights of the Serpent have to invest countless hours of practice and competition to achieve results like this. It's something on par with earning a black belt in your favorite martial art. Now, back in high school, the kind of person who would make their own chainmail in their basement probably got pushed to the fringes of polite society. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is the fact that the same passions that drive people to do that are actually transforming our economy and generating new innovative leaders and products that are changing the world. Now, it's probably good to mention something that won't shock you, and that is that I myself am a geek. I remember spending many, many nights, Mountain Dew-fueled nights, in my cousin's basement, advancing the career of my half-elven ranger in Dungeons & Dragons, or crafting the perfect killer Magic the Gathering deck, or working on my Wesley Crusher impression. Yes, that is actually me in high school, making good decisions about my social life from an early age. And here's the thing, this never goes away. This is still me. I actually still have the shirt. But I geek on a lot more than just this, and the thing that I probably geek on even more than sci-fi fantasy is geeks. I'm fascinated by the way that people dig into their obsessions, by the way they immerse themselves in their passion, even in the face of social judgment or being ostracized by their peers. Geeks get pushed to the fringe, and they still dig in. They love what they love, and they can't help it. After all, if you're going to geek, geek deep. Now, in my role as a leadership trainer and speaker, I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country and speak to hundreds of different groups and organizations about what it's like to be a geek and how being a geek helped me find some success in my life. And what's really interesting about giving a talk like that is that at the end of a geek-themed keynote, geeks come out of the woodwork. They line up to talk to you. And they want to tell you all about the thing that they geek on. They want to commune with a fellow geek. And this has given me an opportunity to encounter and interact with a lot of really interesting geek subcultures, many of which I never knew existed. And I call this world the geekosystem. Now, the geekosystem is vast and diverse, and it includes groups ranging from the competitive Rubik's Cube players to the 501st Legion, an all-volunteer organization of Star Wars costume enthusiasts that call themselves Vader's Fist. And of all the diversity that exists out there in the geekosystem, what's really fascinating to me about it are the common threads that exist throughout. Geeks are masters, makers, and missionaries. First, geeks are masters. Now, show of hands, how many of you have at some point spent time, probably alone in your room with the door closed, trying to move an object with your mind? Yeah, me too. Because who doesn't want to be a Jedi Master? Come on. But that's not the kind of mastery I'm talking about here. Depending on the statistics that you want to read, it takes between 10,000 and 25,000 hours of dedicated practice to master a complex skill. Now, for the layperson, that sounds really intimidating. But for somebody who's spending 40-plus hours at home tinkering with what they love in the evenings, that time flies by. Geeks become masters of complex skills because they love to learn about it. It's fun just to do. This also allows them to complete long-range projects that many of us would quit on. This is the world record holder for the largest Lego model ever constructed. And just to make sure you've got the scale, look closely. Those are real people, not Lego people. This X-Wing fighter was built in the middle of Times Square, and it comprises over 5.3 million Lego blocks. It took 17,000 hours to build. Now, the reason a long-range project like this comes to fruition is because a team of geeks did this 5.3 million times. To do this 5.3 million times, you have to love this. Geeks complete long-range projects because the process is the joy. It's not about the end result, it's about being there, about doing what they love. And that allows them to complete things with a horizon that many of us would run from. Geeks are masters, and they're also makers. Geeks love to explore the space. They like to collaborate, get together with other geeks, and talk about ways it could be better. They like to take the things they love and transform them in interesting ways so that they work better in their life. Gamers, for example, use mods to create entire new worlds in their favorite video games. You probably know a techie who's busted open their cell phone to jailbreak in new features that the manufacturer never considered. The same people who need to know what kind of holidays Wookiees celebrate on their homeworld are the people who will dig into your favorite software platform, pick apart every nook and cranny, and maybe identify the fatal flaw that the producers, the developers never saw, just because they want to be in it. Now, people of a certain age will remember this. This is the Commodore 64. It also happens to be the first computer that I ever owned. I used it to play video games. Some of you may have as well. But I want to talk about a kid named Josh Meadow, who at the age of 10 saved up his allowance money to buy one of these. And he didn't buy it to play video games. He bought it to teach himself computer programming. And he spent the next several decades continuing to explore that hobby, that passion, on his own time. Mostly in the evenings, because during those same years, he was getting a medical degree and becoming a faculty member at the UW public health system. Now, his initial patients were hydrocephalic children. which means that they had too much cerebrospinal fluid that would build up in their skulls, and that buildup of pressure causes real problems. Now, medicine's answer to that problem historically, and still today, has been to install a shunt, literally a hole in the skull, where pressure can be relieved. But the problem that Dr. Meadow kept running into again and again was the fact that there was no way to tell if the symptoms, a simple headache, of a shunt failure were catastrophe or just a headache from maybe staying up too late or having a little extra stress in your life. What this leads to is parents of hydrocephalic kids, every time their kid has even a tiny headache, they don't get to just give them a Tylenol. They have to panic, throw them in the car, race to the emergency room, where surgeons have to literally open their skull to figure out if this is a real problem or just a headache. That's a big issue that he saw again and again, and he felt for those families. It just so happened that because of his passion, he had a unique skill set to help. And in his basement, using parts that he bought at Radio Shack, in his spare time, he built a prototype of an intracranial pressure monitor that allows doctors to figure out if this pressure is building up or if it's just a headache. His original prototype was the size of a pizza box, didn't fit in the head. But when he brought it to his fellow faculty, they worked together and in a short period of time got it down to the size of your pinky fingernail. And now it can fit under the skin in a child's head. And with simple monitors, they can tell what's the problem. The device is entering clinical trials soon. Dr. Meadow took something that he loved and transformed it to fit his world, to make a difference for people that he loves and that he cares about. And that's what geeks do. They're makers. Geeks are also missionaries. You got an idea worth spreading? Find a geek. The only thing a geek loves more than immersing themselves in their own passion is cornering someone else and telling them all about it, and recruiting them onto their team. Have you ever heard of LARPing? Live-action role-playing has come a long way since the days when I, as a teenager, ran through the woods hitting my friends with padded sticks. One of my favorite LARPs is called Vampire the Masquerade, and in case the name didn't spoil it for you, yes, they dress up like vampires. But this is not a small community. This is not a fringe or a niche. This is a massive game that spans the globe. They have storylines that last years. They have a completely functional society with multiple levels of working government. You can be the sheriff of Chicago if you want. And they also have thousands of players across the globe, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Zagreb, Croatia. The players and fans of Vampire the Masquerade are deeply passionate. They love this. I know, I've been recruited. And I recently had a chance to encounter one of the biggest fans of all. The gentleman gamer has spent a lot of time creating online web videos, dozens of them, designed to teach new players of the game, or those who are interested, about the 13 clans of vampire, their history, their culture, the advantages and disadvantages of joining one of the clans, all designed to help onboard new members. He doesn't get paid to do this. He just really likes to share the love. The gentleman in question is a brand missionary, and that's probably why he has over 2 million video views and 14,000 followers. Geeks are masters, makers, and missionaries, which means they're doing things that a lot of us would like to be doing better. So why aren't we? Well, I think the answer comes back to a really basic irony in our society. People who line up for opening night of a movie are fine. But those of us who show up in costume are taking it too far. We've decided at some point as a society that those who obsess beyond a certain point are weird and unacceptable and fringy. And that's deeply ironic when you consider that at the same time we're telling our young people to follow their dreams, do what they love for a living, pursue their passion? Which is it? So as I start to look at what the takeaway is, I think the key is deep passions made public. We have to be willing to show the world what it is that we love, to let our geek flag fly. And if we do that, it unlocks a deep potential within each of us to achieve big things, to master complex skills, complete long-term projects that others would shy away from, to make things that change the world, and to spread important and powerful messages. So my advice to all of you and to all of us is to loosen up and geek deep. Thanks.